So I'm Sara Staley. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am an assistant professor in the School of Education and co-director of A Queer Endeavor.
And I'm Bethy Leonardi, and I am an assistant professor in the School of Education. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am the other half of A Queer Endeavor. Higher education was never something that I thought was a possibility for me after several stints in summer school throughout my middle school and high school experience, and then I became a middle school and high school English teacher and math teacher. And then it was actually after Hurricane Katrina, because I'm from New Orleans, that I got a lot more curious about education policy and racial inequities in education, and that's what brought me back to get my master's degree at CU and then my PhD.
I went to graduate school at CU, and I came from the classroom, so I was a high school English teacher for a number of years and wanted to work with folks who are learning to be teachers. So that was kind of my path, and then A Queer Endeavor started right at the end of graduate school. I connected with Bethy. We noticed that there wasn't any work happening really in our School of Education around gender and sexual diversity, and we started doing the work in our School of Education, and A Queer Endeavor kind of grew from there.
It seemed like, every week there were more and more LGBTQ youth dying by suicide. And at the time, wasn't really preparing our teacher candidates or graduate students to go out into the field and support LGBTQ youth. And so that's when it was kind of became not negotiable anymore.
I mean, a big part of the work that we do in the field is supporting educators to learn about and to talk about LGBTQ plus topics, and part of that is supporting folks to learn to check their assumptions on how people identify, especially in terms of gender, but also in terms of sexuality. And I think it feels really important for me to be out and visible to show what queer femininity looks like, that this is actually what queer can look like.
I think the question of intersectional identities is interesting because I know that this is this is recognition for being women in the field, and I really don't know how I identify these days. I don't identify as a woman, and even though I use she, her, hers pronouns, I think the more I do this work, the more I recognize that my queerness as a person is really a lot about gender. And I think, in the work and outside of the work, that's been, my identity is implicated in what I do. Dean Spade, who's one of my academic mentors, talks about how social justice doesn't trickle down, it has to trickle up. And so for it to trickle up, we need to center folks in our communities who have the least amount of privilege. And I think creating coalitions across intersecting issues of identity and oppression is the advice that I'd give.
I think I would just add to that advice for folks for young women who want to get started, becoming more active in the community. Don't wait for the right time. There's never going to be a perfect time. The time is now, and so just find your niche, find an opportunity, find an organization that you can connect with, volunteer, show up, and just start the work.